And now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. President Putin. He's going to beat President Putin. President Zelensky. I'm so focused on beating Putin, we got to worry about it. Anyway, Mr. President.
Joe,
live from New York. It's Saturday night.
I mean, listen, I don't get it. I truly don't get it. I don't get how I mean, he's shot. He's completely shot. Here's the thing. You remember, like, you always see the things in Hollywood movies where somebody's really outspoken against the politician, and then a couple of goons come and they drag the guy out, right? That's what's happening to Peter Doocy and others who question her. The difference with Karine Jean-Pierre is that she just walked away because she doesn't know how to process having to answer a tough question.
Play the clip for people so they know what you're...
So, say that the Pentagon at some point picks up an incoming nuke. It's 11 p.m. Who do you call? The First Lady? Are you guys just not, since February, testing President Biden for Parkinson's or for dementia? Because if he gets a bad result, it's all over that day.
All right, thanks, everybody.
And just runs away. And that's been the hallmark of this administration. They're never going to answer tough questions. You know what I have found, though, Joe, and I'm going to hand it over to you in the last few years. I mean, since the Biden regime took over, okay? Notice how I choose my words carefully. I'm not going to say that we're elected, how they took over, okay? The press has been a little bit more willing to go after Democrats in the press room. They really have been. Did you hear them laughing when he said that? When Peter Doocy said that? But what he said wasn't a joke. See, because that's always what you have to listen to from the left. Donald Trump, the way he treated Stormy Daniels, his fingers on the nuclear button. This guy, Joe Biden, you're really going to say that you feel safe with him having the nuclear codes? Really?
Well, what Joe Biden showed America is we don't need a president because we don't have one. Anyone who believes that Joe Biden is running this country is not paying attention. And that's not even like being like, I don't like him. Joe Biden had 8 days off before that debate. That was the best of Joe Biden. 8 vacation days, probably ate well under doctor supervision. They probably gave him vitamins, all of it. And he was horrible. Joe Biden just introduced the president of the Ukraine as President Putin. That is mortifying. And when I say it's a Saturday Night Live skit, it's like a Saturday Night Live skit, but it's real. It is utterly and absolutely insane. Now, going to Doocy, I'll be honest with you, it was a little inappropriate, and this is where I'm going to go with it. Notice how she didn't answer. That's exactly what presidents should do when they're not treated well. I've said this many times. If you're not going to treat the president, whoever it is, particularly someone like Donald Trump, well, you're not invited. When you want to be an adult and come into this room like an adult, ask real questions, have a good intent for the people, because that's what the press, it's all about the people. We're supposed to inform the people. You're invited. If you have an agenda, if it's a party like agenda that has nothing to do with anything more than ideological power, you're not invited.
Here's the thing. I didn't take Doocy that way. I'm not saying that you said that he was doing that. I didn't take him that way. I thought he was asking a legit question. Now, only the reason why I'm saying that is because he's had a history of posing challenging and tough questions.
No, I know that. I know that.
So he was asking a legit question. You don't want him to get a test because you know it's done.
Oh,
Kamala
I know
Harris
that.
is president of the
I'm
United
talking
States.
about with the wife thing. He shouldn't
Oh,
have
no,
went.
listen, I agree. Listen, I agree with you on that. If you're going to throw bombs, but here's the thing, though, Joe, I've said it a million times at this show. They started it.
No, I just wouldn't invite them. Like, if I was the president, you're not invited.
Well, remember when DeSantis did that in Florida? Remember when DeSantis said you had to be invited? There was going to be no cameras and anybody from the press had to be invited. You know what happened right away? They got all pushed back. It was like, well, guys, if you want to be unfair, why would I invite you into my home if you're going to hit me over the head?
Joe, that's how it should be handled. Here's the memo. I'll give you the facts after they're vetted by a lawyer. Do what you want with them. You're not invited.
Right.
And that's because the press is out of control. They're a bunch of infants. So ultimately, that is what she did should be the precedent. I'm not talking to you. I am not talking to you. You pull a Ditka. That's a stupid question. I'm not addressing it. Get out, because you're not a professional.
Right.
And none of them are, actually, Joe. They're not professional. It is, Joe, I'll be honest with you. I mean, we're going to go through a number of things tonight. Our country cannot be taken seriously. In all fairness, they said Trump was out of control, and he was. He could say things. We're at a point, it's just a parody. It's Joe Biden is not fit for office. Joe Biden is not running the country. Anyone who thinks otherwise, listen, you got your head in the sand. He's not capable of walking down stairs.
Hey, but Kamala's capable of dancing. I know we kind of cut off her head, but that was Kamala Harris.
Yes, it was.
She was dancing. Imagine her with her fingers on the nuclear code.
Joe, I mean, in all honesty, it's nothing. The country, it's over, Joe. It cannot be taken serious. I don't take it serious. It's like I said, it's a parody, and it's sad. It's sad. Do you imagine that was in NATO that Joe Biden made that comment? Do you imagine what those people say when they go home? Let's be honest. Like when these leaders like leave and they speak to their spouse or they go home and they speak to their own people, they're probably just like, what is going on in the United States of America? Arguably the most powerful nation, one could make the argument, on the planet. It's so embarrassing. It's so embarrassing. Dude, it's just, you cringe when you watch it.
Well,
like if that was done at a meeting at my job, people would have just been like, oh.
Right.
And that's in front of the world.
Did you see Zelensky's his reaction was kind of like,
Joe, they just laugh. They probably just laugh. Like they leave there and they just mock him and laugh. And that's what we've come. This is where we're at.
You know who else laughs at Joe Biden? Except people like us. I feel bad for him. You realize, and I know you do too. I pray for him. I do.
Joe, it's the saddest thing I've ever seen.
But he's got one foot in hell and the other on a banana peel.
Joe, it's serious. Joe Biden is just being used. He wanted to be the president so bad. He's making a fool of himself, and they're just using him. And it's pathetic. It's not even sad. It's pathetic.
You're right. And who I was going to say is laughing at him more than anybody else is Barack Obama. Barack Obama, who laughs at the American people, especially in his own party, if they actually think that Joe Biden's running the country. Obama looks in the mirror or looks at Michelle and says, look at it. Let him be the lightning rod. Remember in The Sopranos, Tony Soprano says about his Uncle Junior, he says, let him be the boss of the family. Let him be the lightning rod. In the meantime, I'll run things behind the scenes. Obama does the same thing. Obama does the exact same thing and laughs at Joe Biden in the meantime.
They all do. It's one of the saddest. It's like I said, it's pathetic. Joe, it's pathetic.
Let me throw something to you. If RFK Jr., okay, was not so rabidly pro-abortion, because he is. He does not agree, I don't believe, with any restrictions. I haven't heard him say he's going to change anything that the Democrat Party wants to do as far as abortion. We know as Casey Royals fan, one of our friends in the chat room has said he's basically, to use her words, an environmental wackadoodle. Okay, so we know that about him. If RFK, let's say for argument's sake, if he was just moderate a little bit, he could be president of the United States. But here's the thing: they don't want him to moderate, or they don't want to moderate to accommodate him, because when it comes to COVID, when it comes to vaccines, when it comes to globalism, when it comes to and some other things that are very precious to the left. He's not their guy. He's not their guy. But you want to know what? If he would moderate, and this was my larger point, I got a little muddled there, Joe. I'm sorry. If he moderated a little bit on abortion and on the environment, he could get a lot of independents and Republicans to vote for him. I believe that. What's your thoughts? Well, here, listen.
Play
Now,
the
this
clip.
is why. Listen, this is why.
Jefferson said that American democracy was rooted in the control of the landscapes by tens of thousands of independent yeoman farmers, each with a stake in our democracy, each with a stake in our system of government. And he said if we lose that base of land control, which had put America in contrast with Europe, because Europe was wealthy people, aristocracy owned all the land, and everybody else was renters or indentured servants or serfs on that land. And in our country, people got their own ownership, and now we're going away from that. And it's not just Smithfield, but it's, BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, it's Bill Gates. It's these, big billionaires and giant corporations who have turned our country into a colony, who are turning us, who are buying up the homes in our country. In the those three companies own 88% of the S&P 500. And they're now buying our agricultural landscapes, and they're buying our single-family homes and our residential homes. So our kids can't afford to get in a home anymore. And we're going from a nation of an ownership society, which is free people, to a renter society. And when we do that, we go from being citizens to being subjects. And we're going to be subjects to China, to these giant corporations who have no patriotism. And, we have to put an end to it. And Maine is doing a better job probably than any state of his.
So he makes sense. I mean, as far as that's concerned, again, I'm not voting for him. Okay. I don't know the circumstances or what circumstances would have to be for me to vote for him. But when he talks like that, when he talks about BlackRock and Vanguard, when he talks about State Street, when he talks about Bill Gates, see, that appeals to a lot of people. But because of Elon Musk and particularly X, and we'll get to Elon Musk in a little bit, people have a lot more information. They know what these big, huge Wall Street banks and private equity funds are doing. They know what Bill Gates is doing. So when he talks like that, he tells me that he could be president, but I just think he's still too crazy on environmentalism and abortion for him to get elected.
It's not even the point of him getting elected. It's just the point he just made. People can't afford houses. I'm going to show you the trajectory of my family. My grandfather on my father's side came from Italy. He worked in a factory. He rented and he took care of 3 children. My grandmother never worked in a factory. That is impossible right now. Impossible. No one could work in a factory. He worked 6 days a week and he took care of 3 children and a wife. Impossible in any state. My father did not go to college, was a barber in a single barbershop, just one barber. And my mother was a secretary, and they owned a home, and they sent 2 kids to college. That is impossible right now. The trajectory that it's going, and that's what he's saying, is Americans will not own homes. He is exactly right. Right now, interest rates are insane, and the price of homes are insane. Look at the salaries, the average salary across America. It's becoming untouchable. It's untouchable in Canada. Now we'll go to college. How is a kid going to get, I'll just use where you went or I went. I went to Scranton, you went to Seton Hall, average schools. You get a 3.0 in marketing, which means you're not stupid, but you're not you're not a brain surgeon. You think that kid is going to be able to pay back $250,000 in debt and get a job that is going to afford him or her to have a family and own a home? And he's speaking to that, and yet he's ignored. He's ignored. People, it's happening right in front of people's faces, and they're complacent. They ignore it, and it's pathetic, Joe. I'll be honest with you. I look at this like I look at a drug addict killing himself. We vote for people who, frankly, do not represent us, Republican or Democrat. And he's addressing that. He's basically saying in that speech that America is an oligarchy. That's what he's saying.
But a lot of people are believe that, and in fact, I think there's overwhelming evidence. It's all over social media now. Why do you think they want to shut down social media? Because everybody knows that the whole world is an oligarchy. Everything is all the things they've railed against. Liberal Democrats, people like RFK and his uncle and his uncle and his father, and every liberal Democrat since then. They always complained about the working class, the middle class is not getting treated right. Those who go out there and go to work. Well, you're treating us like pieces of garbage. You're all oligarchs. You're all globalists. Now, what he's talking about, of course, is the WEF mentality. Okay, I'll applaud him on that. But he's lock, stock, and two smoking barrels, if you will, in lockstep with them when it comes to the when it comes to the environmentalist hoax. So that's what I mean about RFK. To me, is an enigma. He makes all the sense in the world. You just pointed that out. Well, when it comes to, let's say, the fact that we are an oligarchy, we are a colony. All right, we're fastly becoming a colony of China. Seriously. All our big corporations all do business in China. We put money in Chinese pockets. I don't know how much money they put in our pockets. So we are technically a colony. We're occupied. China's buying up all sorts of farmland. Everybody knows that. And this is why they want to shut down Elon Musk, by the way, because he points that out. My larger point about RFK is if he shows you, he is the perfect example, Joe. I love your comments on this. He's the perfect example of how the Democrats will not tolerate even any dissent from any of their positions, stated positions, from abortion, environmentalism, COVID, all of it. Okay. He might disagree with Democrats, this Democrat party, on maybe two things, and they still hate his guts.
Joe, because he's not establishment. And then this goes for, sadly, the Republicans too. Very few. There's a handful that aren't controlled. They're controlled. They're not interested in someone that is not on their team. You have to be on the team. If you're not getting elected. You're not, and they'll fight you tooth and nail. They'll rail you out of town. It says something to people. People should connect the dots.
Right.
This is no longer a country of the people. Tulsi Gabbard has been saying this for quite some time too. She was in the Congress, and by the way, she was given a fast track. They wanted her to jump the line. She gave the golden ring back. She's like, I don't want it. I'm not saying she's great. I'm not saying she should be the president, but I credit her for that. She basically says the day in the life of a congressman is meeting with lobbyists and donors. That's what they do. And that says to me, that's their constituency. It's about the money donors. They control the country. And until, and Vivek recently spoke on this too. He's like, I'm not interested in a nanny state, a Republican nanny state or a Democratic nanny state. I am interested, and I'm going to say his words, and I would vote for Vivek. I'm interested in burning the system down and building it up right from the bottom up. And that's what I want, Joe.
I'm going to surprise you, Joe Rossinello.
Left by adopting the methods of the left. I don't care to replace a left-wing nanny state with a right-wing nanny state. Our goal is to dismantle the nanny state altogether, permanently once and for all, to burn it and metaphorically burn its ashes once more. And if we succeed in doing so, that will mark the beginning of an American revival that starts with the radical principle of the American founding, that the people who we elect to run the government will once again be the ones who actually run the government. Saying hell no to the vision of old world Europe that distrusts we the people, that said we the people can be trusted to sort out our differences on climate change or racial equity. We say hell no to that vision. We the people, for better or worse, will govern ourselves without the managerial class of the administrative state telling us how we live our lives, and we will not take over that apparatus for the purpose of redirecting it. We're going to get in there for the purpose of actually once and for all shutting it down.
Joe, he gets it. You see that right there? I stand with that.
Yes, I do.
That's what I stand for.
I'm with
I'm
you.
going to be honest with you, because it's like when Elon Musk took over Twitter. What did he do? He fired 80% of the company. That's what you do. You have to dismantle it. It's rotten.
Right.
And it's rotten to the core. He gets it. You're not going to do it any other way. Because again, people should just open their eyes to it. And I've said this to people. This is why it's not a Republican and Democratic thing, because we're all in the same boat. We're all sinking.
Mhm.
Joe, we're all sinking. We are sinking, and we're not going to be able to buy homes. We're not going to own anything. We're going, it's 21st century feudalism. It is 100% going in that direction. And until people figure that out, listen, argue all you want. You'll all be on the breadline. You're all going to be on the breadline.
I was going to say nobody's immune from the breadline, Joe Resinello.
That's what this is where, again, people have to just figure that out. If
Right.
people figured that out, we take our country back.
But here's the thing, though. I mean, Vivek, he makes a good point about the administrative state. The American people voted for the people that gave us the administrative state. See, that's the thing. People forget. See, Joe, I told you before, I'm really down on democracy. I'm not sold that democracy is the greatest thing since sliced bread. I disagree with Winston Churchill about democracy. I'm paraphrasing. Democracy stinks, except for everything else is worse. I'm not buying that anymore, because democracy sows the seeds of its own destruction. You know that people could vote themselves into a tyranny. We've done it. We've done it now. Look at what Vivek just said. Let's analyze this for a second, Joe Resinello, here at the front line with Joe and Joe. And if you're just joining us, please share this video all across social media. Analyze what he just said. Tear down the administrative state, okay? But it's the American people that voted for their elected representatives to give all this power to these agencies. EPA, that shuts down small businesses just because they want to. Not anymore, because the Supreme Court had something to say about that. Okay. Or the Securities and Exchange Commission that doesn't do a damn thing as far as regulating, real regulation of Wall Street. That's why you have BlackRock and Vanguard and State Street. Okay. Because the SEC doesn't do a damn thing to reform Wall Street and bring in meaningful regulation. That's why you have the Department of Energy that goes in and, again, could take large swaths of land and tell the oil companies, you can't drill there. We voted for this. So my point is this: we have a tyranny. We already have a tyranny. That's what Vivek is talking about, and Donald Trump is talking about. Is about tearing down and shutting down and burning down the tyranny of the administration, of the administrative state, the deep state. But we voted for it. And we knew we voted for it.
But in fairness, a lot of people, because the press doesn't inform the populace, a lot of people are listening to the wrong things. The information's there. There's a lot of good information on the internet. Intelligent people. Glenn Greenwald, great source of information on the Ukraine. He lives in Brazil. He doesn't have a vested interest. He's a journalist. He has a law degree from the University of New York, NYU Law, one of the best. He's smart. These are people. I'm just using one person as an example. The information's out there, but people are not hearing it. They choose not to hear it. And to be honest with you, Joe, too many people, the people are broken. Adam said it. Democracy only works for a moral and religious people. And any government that disavows God will soon turn into tyranny. Look at the world before Christianity. Dude, we were just killing each other. It was tribal and people just killed each other. Christianity civilized the world. And I have a friend that's not even involved in organized religion. He said this to me point blank. The country is much better off when God was at the center of it. We recently heard, what was it? Richard Dawkins said the same thing, a devout atheist. He basically said, I'd much rather live in a country that believes in God, because you benefit even if you don't believe in God.
Right.
And yet it's like talking to the wall. Joe, I swear, I have never been more frustrated. I can't believe my eyes. I have never seen a group of people who cut their own throat cut their nose off to spite their face. And these are the same people that are going to be on the breadline. These are the same people, their grandchildren are going to be paupers and peasants. Call yourself a Republican, call yourself a Democrat, you're going to be a peasant. And there's not going to be jobs. What do you think, letting in 7 to 10 million people? Oh, the Democrats are for the working man. You just lowered the wages by doing that of every working class man and woman in America, and or stole their job by that action only to get back into power.
Right.
And yet no one connects the dots. Everyone's eyes are shut. Everyone lives in a delusion as the country burns to the ground, as your country for your children is taken from you, and it's gone. It's gone.
Well, here's one of the reasons why it's gone. So if you look at this, right, Joe Rossinello, so Elon Musk, now we all know what's going on. Elon Musk said electronic voting machines and anything mailed in is too risky. We should mandate paper ballots and in-person voting. Okay, that's what he said. Here, let me show you this. This is the vote that was taken on the floor of the House, okay, in regards to making sure that the only people that can vote in elections are American citizens, okay? Could you see that, Joe?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Republican 216 not voting for. Democrat 198 people, Americans, so-called Americans, said you don't have to show an ID. You don't have to be a citizen, okay, to vote in an election. This is the crap that we're dealing with. And listen, all those people that scream and moan about democracy, it's a threat to democracy. It's a threat to democracy. If I hear that one more time, I'm going to blow a gasket in my head, okay? It's a threat to democracy. That's not a threat to democracy. I'm sorry, Joe. I am not better than a person, morally speaking. And in the eyes of God, I am not intrinsically more valuable than any of those people coming across the border. Okay. We're all moral agents. We're all equal in the eyes of God. But here's one thing in the temporal world that we know. I'm an American citizen. I don't go to Mexico and say, I want to vote in your election. They're going to kick my butt back over the border. My point is this. You are not an American citizen. You are not here legally. You cannot vote. If you are an American citizen, you got to show state-issued ID that proves you're an American citizen. And 198 so-called Americans, Democrats, in the House of Representatives voted against it. And Biden's going to veto it.
Joe, you're 100% correct. They don't pay taxes, therefore they don't vote. It comes down to that. In 2016, the Democrats said that there was Russian interference. In fact, they phrased it as it was foreign interference. What do you think this is? They're allowing a group of people, non-taxpayers, to determine the outcome of an election for people who pay taxes. Does that sound like a democracy? A constitutional republic? Excuse me, I'm sorry for the correctersons out there. No. And any person who's serious that doesn't rail against that in our government is part of the problem, Republican or Democrat. That is problem number one. The election is absolutely and positively a joke. Elon Musk is 100% correct. Why do we still have mail-in ballots?
Right.
Why? Why do we have voting through electronic means? It should be paper ballots, and you have to show ID. If people don't have confidence in the election is bogus. And this is what they're pushing in plain sight. No one cares. No one covers it. No one talks about it. And we all walk along and pretend like everything is okay.
Well, some of us walk along and some of us dance along. See, was that a gopher? or something
I
like that.
think
Whatever
so.
that little critter was, that's my reaction every time I see Kamala. It's like,
No, but in all honesty, that should be issue one. If people want to take our government serious, you got to show voter ID. You got to put controls. I want everyone to vote. Don't misunderstand me. But there have to be controls.
Joe.
ID is number one. And Joe, I'm going to tell you right now, I see that. That says to me, between Joe Biden introducing the president of the Ukraine as President Putin, Kamala Harris dancing up a storm, this vote, how could anyone take this country serious? Anyone?
You can't take this country seriously right now. In fact, I mean, I'm not gonna. I mean, I don't like our country for a variety of reasons. The things we allow, baby murder comes to mind when you talk about abortion, and a whole host of other things that the American people, many people, fight against. But excuse me, but not a lot of people do anything about, particularly transgenderism, which should be Michael Knowles was correct. Transgenderism needs to be eradicated, meaning the whole term transgenderism and anything associated with it has to be completely stripped out of our laws, completely. Okay, just go back and take it all out. All right, birthing people and whatever they want to call women, it all has to be gone. But Joe, I'm going to say it one more time. We brought it upon ourselves.
Oh,
okay?
I agree.
Because I have had people tell me right to my face, yeah, well, if there wasn't a little bit of cheating, then the Republicans will get everything they want. Look at the Supreme Court. You have AOC, okay? A colleague of mine that I work with, I didn't see this, so I'll take him at his word. AOC is calling for an investigation into Alito and Clarence Thomas, okay? Intellectually speaking, these men are giants. Relative to AOC, she's the smallest atom compared to the mass of the sun. Okay, but do you see, AOC is going to be applauded by the press, okay, by the leftist culture, by the Marxists, because she's so brave going after those old men. How come nobody calls her a racist for going after the second black Supreme Court justice of the United States? How come nobody calls her a racist for that? I mean, I never understood the double standards that conservatives allow Democrats and liberals to get away with. Call her a racist. She's going after Clarence Thomas. Call her a racist. She's no Boricua from the Bronx. She's from friggin' Westchester. She went to Yorktown Heights High School. She went to Boston University. Her father was a successful, I think, dentist. She's not Jenny from the block, but she passes herself off that way. She should be called what she is. She's an elitist from Westchester who doesn't like the fact that this black man from Georgia rose up through the ranks to become a sitting United States Supreme Court justice. How come nobody's calling her a racist?
Joe, because everyone likes to live in their own world and they don't want to see things. It comes down to this. When you don't believe in God, you'll believe in anything. And when we don't know who we are anymore, and as Americans, we become slaves. And that is exactly what has happened. We are slaves. We're slaves to debt. We're slaves to commercialism. We're slaves to political ideology. We don't even know who we are anymore as a people.
Look at how many people look at how many people wore masks during COVID and they didn't have to. The only reason I wore one is because
I see people wearing them now.
Right. And the Karens out there that are like on subways and in parks, that one woman, I never forget it. This is typical of what we're talking about. Okay. Now, I'm never going to say that people don't have the right to vote. If you're an American citizen, you have the right to vote. That's your right. I have mine too. But it really bothers me that I have to share this so-called democracy with a woman who, when that was all going on back in 2020, 2021, two young boys, 10 years old, 11 years old. They went in the park, Joe, like you and I would have done 45 years ago, and they started throwing the football around. Nobody around. On the other side of the fence, there's trees, there's open air. They were throwing the football around. This woman stood on the other side of the fence and said, I hope you two die of COVID, because they weren't wearing masks while they were playing football. That is the mentality. That right there, that 2 10-year-old kids should die of COVID because they're not wearing masks. That is the typical American leftist, right there.
Well, that is why the election can't fix America, because there's too many. We as a people are broken. Joe, we're broken. America, there's far too many people They don't know how to live anymore, and the byproduct of their life shows it. We are a broken people, and it comes down to this: we have abandoned our first principles: God, family, country, in that order. And any nation that abandons God will quickly turn into a tyrannical entity. Because if you don't believe in God, you believe in power. And that is the substitute for God. And that is all the uniparty is interested in: power. And guess who gets left in the dust? We the people, the regular person who works. And that's what we're seeing. And people, too many people, actually still buy into it. They think that Donald Trump is going to fix America. You are high.
They think we're embarking on a golden age if Donald Trump. Now, don't get me wrong. Vivek is right. If
I'm
Donald
going to
Trump-
vote for Donald Trump.
gonna
I'm
vote for
not,
him
don't
too.
get me wrong, but
Joe,
I'm just
listen,
saying.
I voted for Donald Trump for judges, as you did, and now I'm voting for him for more judges. Okay, because he's not going to do anything about abortion. But I'm also, real quick, I'll throw it over to you. I'm also voting for him. I took him at his word when he said, "I'm going to nominate people from this list, not the people like the people on this list." He said, "The people on this list." Okay, and he did. I took him at his word. I'm going to take him at his word. I'm going to take Vivek at his word. If he's going to be hopefully he does become the VP nominee. I'd like to see him more than I would JD Vance. And JD Vance is a fellow Catholic. He's another guy that's cheesed me off lately. But nonetheless, if they're right, I'll take Trump at his word that the first thing he's going to do is abolish the Department of Education. When I see that, then I know it's not just saber rattling. That means he's ready to go in and start chopping whole agencies out of the federal government. And they are executive branch agencies. Okay. Listen, if the Congress wanted to turn around and say, well, we're not going to vote with you on this, Donald Trump has the authority as the president, as their boss, the boss of the agencies, to fire everybody. Well, now you don't have an agency. You have an agency in name only, but nobody's going to work there because I'm firing everybody. And I am under no obligation to keep them there. Department of Energy, Department of Education, defense is a different story because that's got a whole other conversation. But you know where I'm going with this is the FBI, all of it. They got it. They have to get stripped of all their power. They got to get bare bones or like totally reformed or totally abolished. Trump has the power to do that. I'm going to take him at his word. Now, is that embarking on a golden age? The only thing I'll tell you is this: it's a decent first step.
Listen, I'm voting for him too. But I'll be truthful, if you ask me, he's not radical enough. I actually would. Vivek's not ready, but I would like him to be the president. He gets it. People don't get it because the average person, wait till the next generation. Joe, this is what the rest of the world faces. We're becoming a part of that. It's happened already in Canada. There is no middle class in Canada anymore.
Done.
It's gone.
Done.
It's gone. In Europe, it's gone. People don't get married in Europe. Know why? Because they can't afford to. Men can't get jobs. How's that?
Right.
You can't get a job to afford to have children and a wife. Does that sound like a country you want to live in? This is Europe. This isn't Tanzania, Sudan. This is Portugal,
Right.
Greece. That's coming here.
Oh, yeah.
California is a dumpster fire. We're one country, we're one president away from that spreading across the nation. Yet people are asleep at the wheel. They're frigging cheering in the streets for a man that has 1 foot in the grave, who's not the president of the country because he can't even walk straight.
Right.
And actually people still think that it's all real.
Yeah.
They like, Joe, I mean, connect a few dots. Actually, just watch this show and these clips and think for yourself out of the box. Do your own research. Start asking questions, and you will come to the same conclusions.
Joe, but you have to accept that if someone is going to do those things, if someone is going to be an authentic seeker of the truth. And I'm not talking even in the religious sense. I'm even just talking in the political sense, in terms of how we do things that are right. If you're even a little bit interested in those things, is great. But the fact is, we have a population that, yes, I'm with E. Michael Jones on this. They have been, he'll say it different. I'm going to paraphrase him. When you're fed sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and you're happy with that, you are a slave, and that's what we're dealing with. Joe, listen, I ain't no slave to the Republican Party, and neither are you. I'm not a slave to the conservative movement, and neither are you. But you know damn well, and you know a lot of people in your life, and I've been in the acting industry, I've been in the restaurant industry. Joe, throw a rock, you're hitting a liberal. Okay, they're all slaves. They'll swear to you up and down they're actually free. They'll never question liberal Democrat. You can have Kamala dancing that thing she's doing for an hour. They'll think she's serious. They'll say, "Oh, she's so intelligent," and they'll say that Biden he's got all his brains. Okay, or it's like my mother said, he's the brains of fallout. Okay, they'll have you believe in Barack Obama's the smartest guy since Jesus Christ. Because why? Because they're slaves. Because they've lost their ability to reason. They've lost their ability to ask questions. Because that's all that they're worried about is what goes on below the waist and bodily pleasure. Michael Jones is right about that. And if they looked in the mirror and understood, I'm drinking too much, I'm smoking too much pot, I'm doing too much drugs, and I'm having too much sex, and that's all I'm asking for in life. If I'm not a slave, I don't know what is.
Well, I would agree with that. And that, again, the only reason why you're in that position is you don't know who you are. God, family, and country. We don't value those things. They're the bedrocks of every sound society.
You said it yourself. Richard Dawkins said it. He said it. He goes, I'd rather live in a Christian country.
Joe, it's a fact.
I was flabbergasted when I heard that.
Joe, he's smart and he's honest. A country that is not guided by God. I'm not saying a theocracy. A country where God is not the center quickly turns into a tyrannical nation because power replaces God. God tempers leaders. If you believe in God, it tempers people because there's accountability outside of this life and you know it. When you don't have that, all bets are off. Might is right. It's power driven.
Well, the way I would describe it is this. I brought up on the show before Bishop Barron's analogy to the baseball field, right? Where there is no game unless there's rules. Without rules, it's chaos. There's nothing particularly beautiful about it. There's nothing exciting about it. Without rules, without baselines and pitcher's mounds and home plate and bases and outfield fence, bats, balls, there's no rules. And there has to be an umpire to be able to enforce those rules. It's the same thing. Within that context, Derek Jeter could bring beauty to the game of baseball and every other great baseball player that ever played the game. My larger point is this, Joe, why that applies to government also. God gives us, if you look at it in Genesis, God says you could eat of all the fruits of these trees. All of it is yours. What he's really saying, and what the writer of Genesis is saying, Joe, I don't mean to get biblical on you, but just for a second, is that I give you vast amounts of freedom. I ask that you just don't try to be God. That's it. And I command that you don't try to be God. And we just can't help ourselves. We have to grasp, just like Eve grasped for the apple. We grasp for everything. But then don't be surprised when you find that you have a slave master.
Well, that's
don't
Joe,
be surprised
right on, and they do.
Shackles.
Joe, they do. That they'll deny it, but they're in debt. They're slaves to their passions. They're slaves to commercialism. This is America. It's lost. And that's why we put up with a man that has one foot in the grave that isn't the president. That Kamala Harris is there because she fits a certain mold, a message that's trying to be portrayed. 198 people say you don't have to show ID when you vote, and people are okay with that. Joe, how could you possibly take such a country serious if you're a rational and intelligent person? You can't.
Joe,
I don't. Joe,
rational and intelligent people do not fear an opposing point of view. Now, where am I going with this? Joe, you and I are Catholic. We don't care what anybody says. You want to challenge me? I don't care if you're an atheist. I don't care if you're a Jew. I don't care if you're a Protestant. I don't care if you're a Muslim. I'm not backing down. I'm not backing down from talking to you. I'm not backing down from having a debate. I'll do the best I can. I'll bone up on the subject or whatever we're talking about. I am totally willing to defend our position as Roman Catholics. Now, let's just take one example, because I've said this before here at the front line with Joe and Joe. Please, if you're watching this, please share this video all across social media. I say this before. When someone says to you, Joe Resinello, there is no debate on that issue, that means the debate is wide open. Okay, that means, and you know what? And it has been this way for a while. On this issue, they say there's no debate. I love Neil Oliver. Listen to this.
After COVID and the war in Ukraine, the authorities lied about the climate. They've been lying about the climate for years. The climate crisis, the world at boiling point, rising sea levels, dying polar bears, the works, it's all lies. None of it's about saving the planet. None of it's about ecology in any true sense of the word. Renewable energy, that's another scam. Saying green energy is kind to the planet is a lie. Green's just a colour. They've just painted that lie green so they try and get away with it. Wind farms are preceded by the wholesale clearance of all the wildlife on the site. Everything that crawls or flies or swims is moved out in boxes so that it's a completely sterile field that they raise those turbines in. And the turbines are anchored in vast plugs of concrete. Concrete being one of the most ungreen products a person could even dream of making in terms of its constituent ingredients and the amount of energy that it requires to make it. Electric vehicles are made using the energy from fossil fuels, and they're powered in the main with electricity generated by burning more fossil fuels.
So now he'll be dismissed as a conspiracy nut, and every other name that Joy Reid and the rest of that horrid crew can call people like that, when all he did was just bring up a few facts, okay? And that's what I mean about people who don't want debates. That's why John Kerry, when Tom Massey was giving John Kerry the business, sorry, Joe, I know you don't like when I call people names. John Kerry's a moron. And he's evil on top of it, okay? When Tom Massey was giving him the business, and Kerry goes, "Are we gonna have an intelligent conversation?" Have it, Mr. Kerry. Have it. He's presenting facts to you. Argue the point, but they don't. And guess what? Many, many, many people, is my larger point, Joe Resinello. I'm going to hand it over to you. They allow the John Kerrys of the world, the Leonardo DiCaprios, all the people flying around the world in private jets and really polluting the atmosphere. Okay. They don't want a debate because they know that they'll lose.
You know, it's funny. I just listened to a gentleman who is a CEO of a fertilizing company, and he had some interesting information regarding the climate. Basically, what he said is the temperature of the world is ticking upwards. However, people are responsible for only 6% of that uptick. 94% of that uptick is due to nature and only nature. And he basically said that while CO2 can be growing, you can offset it in certain ways, like plant trees. Make sure the permafrost stays on the ground by having, say, in certain parts of, say, the Soviet Union, or where it's very cold in Canada, put animals on the land. Certain things. He used even the example of, instead of putting blacktop on the roads, make them white so the light doesn't reflect. He just noted a number of things to offset. But ultimately, it's 6%. This was his words, not mine. And he's a guy that's involved in that industry. When do you ever hear somebody say something like that? If you ask me, it was a very fair and balanced conversation the guy had. He acknowledged certain things, and he also addressed certain things. They're using this as a tool, just like they used COVID to take away power. And they've been very successful.
Yeah. Yeah.
They've been
Rush
Very
Limbaugh said it, oh,
successful.
30 years ago. 30 years ago when he was on the radio in New York City, Rush Limbaugh said, he goes, let's be clear about the green movement, environmentalists. They're watermelons. They're green on the outside. They're red on the inside. And they blew a gasket. They're all Marxists. We know that. Why do they want to push people? You covered Canada a lot, Joe, over the last year. Why do they want to push people in the 15-minute cities? Because they want to control you completely. Then they want to convince you that by doing that, you're actually going to save the planet.
Joe, it's
Because
just feudalism. It's because poor people are easily controlled. They don't want you to own your own home. They don't want you to own your own business. They don't want you to have cash. It's a way to control the masses.
Right.
And people say, oh, you're a conspiracy theory. No, it's happening. It's happening. By the way, no, it's happened. It's happened.
Oh, you know what I would do? Can I throw? I'd love your opinion on this. Like sometimes I sit around and like the teenagers, they just stand there. They sit there sometimes and they just look at their belly button. Because they're just contemplating life. Or like a 10-year-old. I'm like that sometimes. I don't look at my belly button, but I'm contemplating all these things in my mind. Do you know what I would do if I was the president of the United States? And I'm saying aside from all the individual issues. You want to talk about power in the executive branch? I would demand that if they survive the cuts, the National Endowment for the Arts and the National Endowment for the Humanities, I would get the two heads of those two agencies. I'll bring them into my office and say, here's what you're going to do. You have 1 year to do this, all right? Or basically, I would give them 6 months. You have 6 months to make this happen, or else you're fired and I'm going to close your agencies down because you're no earthly good. I'm going to tell you how you could be an earthly good. We're going to take every single hot button issue that this country faces, every single one. And we're going to call them something between debates and symposiums, okay? Week-long gatherings of the so-called smartest people around on those issues, okay? And they have debates. Okay? And the debates are filmed. And the debates are broadcast over PBS, over NPR. All the social media companies are going to be obligated through an act of government to broadcast them. Now, where am I going with this? You have to debate environmentalism. You have to debate abortion. You have to debate evolution. You have to debate all of it. And if you're so interested in democracy, it's about democracy, then give the American people that. I tell them you have 6 months to put debates together. You want to debate the existence of God? Go get Sam Harris. Go get Daniel Dennett, passed away. Go get Richard Dawkins. Go get Sam Harris. But we're not going to do just an Oxford debate. This is going to be a debate that's going to be mandated by the government, has to be broadcast all over the place for the period of a year. All over social media, you have to make it accessible to people on social media. NPR, PBS, and all the major cable news channels have to air these debates. You know who wouldn't go for that? The left. Because they don't want debate. To me, that would be not because I'm brilliant. That would be a brilliant idea because then you could turn around and say, look, the president of the United States wants to debate all these things and put it all out there for the American people to decide. They will run for the hills. They wouldn't want to debate them even for a second. Joe Resinello, we have 2 minutes left. I'm going to throw it over to you for the final word.
I would agree. That's why they censor, because when the lie loses power, they have to censor. But what I would also say is this: logic and facts no longer work because people hear what their itchy ears want to hear. How can anyone look that vote where 198 people who supposedly represent tax-paying citizens say you don't have to show ID? How could any person who works hard, Republican or Democrat, say that that's fine? Joe, if you do say that that's fine, because that does not discriminate, anyone can vote in this country, frankly, you are in the fog. And too many people are in the fog, Joe. Our people are broken. The people. That's why we have to fix the people before we fix the government. Because ultimately, a corrupt people gets the government they deserve. And what do we have? We have a man who can't even identify the president of the Ukraine, who he just paid billions and billions of dollars to. It's absurd, it's embarrassing, and frankly, it's disheartening. And any human being that has 2 brain cells in their head and a little bit of objective common sense should be able to detect it.
Yeah.
But the problem is we don't want to. We prefer the lie because, frankly, too many people live a lie and they live in slavery and they prefer slavery to freedom. Well, guess what? You will get what you want.
You'll get what you want. You'll get what you want, and it's a shame to say, but that's exactly. Look, we're trying to do our part. We've said it a million times. We're small players in a very large pond, but we didn't exchange our walk-on part in the war for a lead role in a cage. We're in the war. We're out there. We're putting it on the line, and everybody out there has to do it also, whether it be in the workplace, whether it be on social media, whether it be with your families. My position is known, Joe, and I know that your position is known when it comes to politics, religion, and all of it. And I don't care what anybody says. I said to somebody the other day, I'm an abortion abolitionist. I thought their brains were going to fly out because they expected me to say pro-life because they knew I was Catholic. I said, no, I'm not pro-life. I'm an abortion abolitionist. All of them need to be abolished. But I said it. I said it in a place maybe I shouldn't have said it because I was at work, but I'm not going to kowtow anymore. God will take care of me, just like God will take care of you. In the meantime, we're out there. What we would ask everybody who's watching this show, we got Brian in the chat room. We got so many people, our friends are in the chat room. Thank you so much for coming by. Please, wherever you're seeing this, Rumble, X, Facebook, YouTube, share it, particularly on X and Rumble. Help us out on X and Rumble if you don't mind. Help us out. Like, subscribe, share. We thank you all the time for joining us. We go live Thursday nights, 9 o'clock Eastern, where Joe and I let you know. Joe and I are a couple Italian guys from New Jersey. We would have these conversations around the barbecue anyway. We'd much rather share them with you. So thanks once again. And remember, until the next time, that our conversation